The alley taught you to recognize danger by sound. Footsteps that hesitated meant trouble. Engines that idled meant worse. But that night, the danger came wrapped in silence, broken only by a cry so small I almost missed it beneath the rain. I'd been counting the hours until dawn, huddled under my tarp behind the restaurant where yesterday's bread sometimes appeared in the dumpster. 3 days since my last real meal. 2 weeks since I'd slept somewhere without one eye open. 1 moment away from drifting into the shallow sleep that passes for rest on the streets. Then I heard the baby, and everything I thought I knew about survival shattered against the sight of that silver bracelet catching streetlight, a piece of jewelry worth more than I'd seen in 6 months, strapped to the wrist of an infant left to die beside trash. The night wind scraped through the alley like broken glass, matching the hollow scraping inside my own stomach. I pushed myself up from my patch of concrete, palms stinging against the cold, and followed the sound past the dumpster to the overturned trash can near Francesco's back door. My breath caught. He lay there in a cream silk blanket soaked dark with rain, impossibly small, fists clenching at air like he could grab onto life itself. The thin silver bracelet clung to his tiny wrist, catching what little light existed. I could make out ornate engraving, letters, a crest I didn't recognize, beautiful and expensive and completely wrong for this filthy alley. My nurse training, 3 years before everything fell apart, kicked in before thought could stop me. I lifted him against my chest, his weight barely there, his skin cold. Too cold. Shh. I got you now, I whispered, tucking him inside my coat, pressing him against whatever warmth my body could offer. That's when I felt it. The wrongness of this moment. Designer blanket, silver jewelry, a healthy weight infant, recently fed, carefully dressed beneath the soaked outer layer. This wasn't an unwanted child. This was something else. I should have called the police. Should have flagged down one of those luxury cars that occasionally purred past the alley entrance. Should have done anything except what I did next. But standing there in the rain, feeling that tiny heartbeat flutter against my ribs like a trapped bird, I couldn't make myself let go. My hands, which had lost everything else, refused to release this one fragile thing. I glanced up and down the alley, half expecting to see someone, a frantic mother, a guilty father, anyone. The street beyond remained empty except for the rain slicking the cobblestones, the distant hum of the city's nightlife blocks away where people like me had stopped existing. My fingers brushed the bracelet, trying to read the engraving more clearly. The first initial was definitely an A. The second looked like a P. Below them, an intricate family crest, a crowned eagle or lion I couldn't tell in the darkness, and words in Latin I couldn't decipher. "Where's your mama?" I whispered, checking the bundle for any note, any explanation. Nothing. Just expensive fabric and this impossibly small life someone had left next to garbage. I pulled my coat tighter around us both and made my way back to my tarp, telling myself I'd figure it out in the morning. Get him warm tonight. Find a police station at dawn. Do the right thing. But even as I settled against the wall, even as his crying softened to whimpers and then to the rapid breathing of infant sleep, some part of me knew I was lying to myself. I adjusted the tarp overhead as the rain intensified, drumming against plastic with new urgency. The baby? I couldn't keep thinking of him as it, nestled into the crook of my arm, and I felt something crack open in my chest. The same instinct that had made me want to be a nurse. The same stubborn hope that poverty hadn't managed to kill. My hand traced the bracelet one more time, and I noticed something I'd missed. a name engraved on the inner side. A. Panicucci. Panicucci. The name meant nothing to me then. I didn't know it was whispered in back rooms. Didn't know it made grown men nervous. Didn't know that somewhere across the city, in a villa with marble floors and armed guards, a man everyone called untouchable was tearing his empire apart, searching for this exact child. All I knew was the weight of a life in my arms and the decision I'd already made without meaning to. That's when I saw them. 2 cars sliding past the alley entrance, moving too slowly for normal traffic. Black sedans with tinted windows, the kind I'd learned to avoid during my months on the streets. They paused at the intersection, and for a moment I swore one of them angled toward the alley. I pressed deeper into shadow, one hand cupped over the baby's head, barely breathing. The cars moved on, their red taillights vanishing into the rain. I was being paranoid. Had to be. Who would be looking here, in this forgotten corner where the city discarded its unwanted? But as I sat there in the darkness, feeling that tiny heartbeat against mine, I couldn't shake the sensation of invisible eyes watching, of having crossed some threshold I didn't understand. The baby made a small sound in his sleep, and I looked down at his face. So perfect, so utterly dependent on the homeless woman who'd found him in the trash. "Just for tonight," I whispered, knowing even then it was a promise I couldn't keep. "I'll keep you safe just for tonight." I didn't know that one decision, one moment of compassion I couldn't afford, would rewrite everything. That the man whose name was engraved in silver on this child's wrist would soon learn my face. That destiny sometimes hides in the filth of despair, waiting to be lifted into the light. All I knew was that the night had given me something to live for again, and I was transfixed by the weight of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how I ended up here. How a girl who once wore scrubs and dreamed of saving lives wound up saving one in the place where the city throws away everything it doesn't want to see. 6 months earlier, I'd had a future. A mother who believed in me, a uniform with my name stitched above the pocket, a tiny apartment that was mine, with a bed that didn't come with bed bugs and neighbors I knew by name. 6 months earlier, I was Lisa Randi, 25-year-old nurse trainee at Sacred Heart Hospital, and the world still made sense. Then my mother got sick. The baby's fever started just before dawn. I woke to his whimpering against my chest. That particular sound every mother learns to fear. Not a cry of hunger or discomfort, but something deeper, sicker. I pressed my palm to his forehead and felt the heat radiating through his thin skin. "No, no, no," I whispered, sitting up too fast. The tarp shifted above me, sending a cascade of collected rainwater onto my legs. I barely noticed. His tiny face was flushed, his breathing rapid and shallow. In the gray pre-dawn light filtering into the alley, I could see his chest working too hard with each breath. My nurse training, rusty but not forgotten, cataloged the symptoms automatically. Fever, respiratory distress, possibly pneumonia from exposure. He needed antibiotics, a hospital, things I couldn't provide from under a tarp behind a restaurant. I rewrapped him in the silk blanket, now stained and damp despite my best efforts, and tucked him back inside my coat. His little fist curled around my finger, the silver bracelet sliding down his impossibly small wrist. The crest caught the light, mocking me with its evidence of a world where babies didn't die from treatable infections. "Shh, shh," I hummed softly, rocking him against my shoulder. The melody came without thinking, something my mother used to sing when I was small. Stella stellina, la notte si avvicina. His whimpering quieted slightly, responding to the vibration of my voice against his ear. I kept humming, kept rocking, my mind racing through options I didn't have. A hospital would ask questions. Questions would lead to child services. Child services would take him, and I'd be lucky if I only faced charges for not reporting him immediately. At worst, they'd assume I was the one who'd abandoned him, and my word, a homeless woman's word, wouldn't mean much against the evidence. But if I didn't get him help, he could die. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices settling on shoulders already carrying too much. When I opened them again, the decision was made. Not the smart one, not the safe one, but the only one I could live with. "Okay," I whispered to him, to myself, to whatever force had put this child in my path. "Okay, we'll figure this out." I gathered my backpack, lighter now without the few possessions I'd sold over the past weeks, and checked the alley. Empty except for the usual morning debris, broken pallets, scattered trash, evidence of lives lived in shadows. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and gray. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks rumbled past on the main street. A street cleaner's mechanical whir echoed from a few blocks away. Somewhere, people were brewing coffee in kitchens that had working heat, checking weather apps on phones with service plans, living lives that felt like distant memories. I needed money. Medicine cost money. The only thing I had worth selling was already sold, except for the bracelet. My hand went to the baby's wrist, fingers tracing the engraved metal. Panicucci. Whoever this family was, they had resources. Resources that could find a homeless woman who pawned their heirloom. But what choice did I have? "I'll get it back," I promised the sleeping infant. "Somehow. When you're well. I'll get it back to your family." Another lie I wanted to believe. The pawn shop on Via Mercato didn't open until 9, which gave me 3 hours to kill. I spent them in the covered stairwell of an abandoned office building 6 blocks away, a spot I'd discovered during my first week on the streets, before I'd learned the best shelters, the safest alleys, the patterns that kept you alive. The baby, I couldn't keep thinking of him as the baby, needed a name. Something to call him that wasn't just him or it or the infant. Something that made him real. Made this whole impossible situation feel less like a fever dream. "Noah," I whispered, testing it out. "You came in a flood, didn't you? In a storm. Noah survived a flood. You'll survive this." He made a small sound against my chest, and I chose to believe it was approval. "Noah," I said again, firmer this time. "A commitment. A promise. Your name is Noah." The fever hadn't broken, but it hadn't spiked either. I counted that as a small mercy. Every few minutes I checked his breathing, his color, his temperature with the back of my hand. The motions came back easily, muscle memory from hospitals and sick rooms, from a life when I was the one people turned to for help, instead of the one everyone looked away from. At 8:47, I made my way to Via Mercato, Noah bundled against the morning chill. The street was already busy, vendors setting up produce stands, shop owners rolling up security gates, the everyday machinery of commerce grinding to life. The pawn shop sat between a butcher and a dry cleaner, its windows barred and dusty. A yellowed sign proclaimed, "Compro oro," in faded letters. I'd walked past it a dozen times, always promising myself I'd never be desperate enough to need it. Funny how quickly never becomes now. A bell chimed as I pushed through the door. The interior smelled like old cigarettes and desperation, a scent I was becoming too familiar with. Glass cases displayed the remnants of other people's hard times. Wedding rings, watches, instruments, electronics, evidence of moments when survival meant sacrifice. Behind the counter, a man looked up from his newspaper. 60-something wire-rimmed glasses, the expression of someone who'd heard every sob story twice. His eyes flicked to Noah, then to my worn coat and unwashed hair. I watched his assessment happen in real time. Homeless, desperate, probably stolen goods. Help you? His tone said he already knew the answer. I approached the counter, unzipping my coat carefully to avoid jostling Noah. I need to sell something. Just temporarily. I'll buy it back. He'd heard that before, too. I could see it in his face. Let's see it. I worked the bracelet off Noah's tiny wrist, trying not to think about what I was doing. It slid free easily. Too easily, really, sized for an older child. Someone had put this on him recently, maybe hoping it would identify him if... when? I shook the thought away and placed the bracelet on the counter. The jeweler's expression changed instantly. He pulled a loop from his pocket and examined the piece, and I watched his fingers still over the engraving. The family crest. The name. A. Panicucci. Where did you get this? His voice had gone careful, controlled. It's a family piece, I said, the lie ready. I need money for medicine. My baby's sick. He looked at Noah, then back at the bracelet, then at me. Some calculation happening behind his eyes that I couldn't read. Wait here. He disappeared into a back room before I could respond. I heard a door close, the murmur of a voice. A phone call, maybe? My stomach clenched with warning, that street sense that had kept me alive whispering that something was wrong. I should leave, should grab the bracelet and walk out. But I'd already committed, and Noah's fever was climbing again. I could feel the heat of him even through my coat. The jeweler returned, his expression neutral. I can give you €200. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough for antibiotics and formula and everything else Noah needed. But it was more than I'd had an hour ago. 300, I countered, hating the desperation in my voice. It's solid silver. The craftsmanship alone. 250. Final offer. I looked down at Noah, at his flushed cheeks and rapid breathing, and nodded. The jeweler counted out bills with practiced efficiency, then wrote up a pawn ticket with details I barely registered. I signed a name, not quite mine, not quite fake, and pocketed the money and the ticket with shaking hands. The free clinic on Via Santo opens at 10, he said as I turned to leave, something almost like kindness in his voice. 2 blocks south. They don't ask questions. I mumbled thanks and pushed back out into the morning, Noah's weight against my chest feeling heavier without the bracelet on his wrist. I didn't see the jeweler return to his back room. Didn't see him pick up his phone again, scrolling to a number he'd been told to call if certain items ever crossed his counter. Didn't see him photograph the bracelet from 3 angles, the engraving crystal clear under his professional lights. All I saw was the street ahead and the clinic 2 blocks south, and the promise of medicine that might save the child I'd decided, somewhere between finding him and naming him, was mine to save. The free clinic occupied the ground floor of what had once been a monastery. Appropriate, I thought, given that what happened inside required a certain faith. Faith that volunteer doctors could work miracles with expired medications and donated supplies. Faith that the desperate and the sick deserved care even when they couldn't pay. The waiting area was already crowded. I recognized a few faces from the shelters, Marco with his persistent cough, Elena who'd been pregnant last time I saw her, an older man whose name I didn't know, but whose face I'd seen sleeping near the train station. We all had the same look, the particular exhaustion of trying to survive on the margins. I gave Noah's name to the intake volunteer, a college student with kind eyes and new sneakers, and settled onto a plastic chair to wait. Noah fussed against my shoulder, his little body radiating heat that had nothing to do with the warmth of my coat. "Not long now," I whispered, rocking him gently. "Not long." An hour passed, then another. Around me, people were called back, disappeared through a doorway, returned with prescriptions or instructions, or sometimes just the same defeated expression they'd arrived with. I counted the money in my pocket again, €250 minus what I'd need for formula and diapers. Maybe enough for a week in a cheap hostel if I was careful. Maybe. "Noah Randi." I looked up to see a doctor standing in the doorway, mid-40s, dark hair graying at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses that reminded me of my old attending physician at Sacred Heart. He wore jeans under his white coat, the uniform of someone who volunteered here on their day off. I followed him back to a cramped examination room that smelled like antiseptic and hope. "I'm Dr. Marcello," he said, gesturing for me to sit. His eyes went to Noah, professional assessment already happening. "How long has he had the fever?" "Since this morning. Maybe a few hours." I laid Noah on the examination table, unwrapping him carefully. Dr. Marcello's hands were gentle as he examined Noah, checking his temperature, listening to his chest, looking in his ears and throat. I watched his face for reactions, for the particular expression doctors got when something was seriously wrong. "Upper respiratory infection," he said finally, making notes on a tablet. "Probably caught a chill. He's young. How old? 2 months? 3? "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Maybe 2 months." His eyes flicked up to mine, a question forming, but he didn't ask it. Instead, "Any other symptoms? Vomiting, diarrhea, rash?" "No, just the fever and the breathing." He nodded, made more notes. Then he reached for Noah's wrist to check his pulse, and I saw his fingers still over the pale skin where the bracelet had been. The indentation was still visible, a thin line where the metal had rested. "He usually wears something here?" The question was casual, but something in his tone wasn't. "A bracelet," I said carefully. "I had to pawn it. For medicine money." Dr. Marcello's expression didn't change, but I saw his gaze sharpen slightly. "What kind of bracelet?" "Silver. Family heirloom type thing." He was quiet for a moment, his fingers still resting on Noah's wrist. Then he seemed to shake himself and return to the examination. "Okay, I'm going to prescribe antibiotics and infant acetaminophen for the fever. Keep him warm and hydrated. If the fever goes above 39 Celsius or he has trouble breathing, you need to bring him to a hospital. Understand?" I nodded, relief making me almost dizzy. He wrote on a prescription pad, actual paper, not electronic, the kind that didn't create records, and handed me 2 slips. "The pharmacy 2 streets over will fill these. Tell them Marco sent you." "Marco. They'll know." He started to turn away, then paused. "You're doing good work, keeping him safe. But be careful. Sometimes the things we find aren't ours to keep." The words sent ice down my spine. "What do you mean?" But he was already moving to the door, professional distance reestablished. "Just advice. Keep him warm. Watch the fever." Then he was gone, and I was left holding 2 prescriptions and a warning I didn't fully understand. Rosa found me outside the soup kitchen that afternoon. I'd spent the morning's money carefully, antibiotics first, formula second, enough cheap diapers to last a few days. That left €60 for everything else, which meant I was back to the usual calculus. Sleep somewhere risky but free, or pay for a bed and go hungry. "Lisa." Rosa's voice cut through my mental arithmetic. Inside. Now. I followed her into the soup kitchen's back office, Noah asleep against my shoulder for the first time all day. The antibiotics were working already. Small mercies. Rosa closed the door behind us and crossed her arms. She was 50-something, built like she'd raised 6 kids and run a marathon between each one, with eyes that missed nothing and a heart that had never learned to harden completely. "Tell me you didn't keep that baby." I opened my mouth, but she held up a hand. "Don't. I don't want to hear the explanation. I've been running this kitchen for 12 years, Lisa. I know when someone's made a stupid, dangerous choice out of love." "Rosa, there are posters," she interrupted. "Started going up this morning. Missing child. Reward for information. And you know whose people are distributing them?" I shook my head, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. Panicucci family. The name hung in the air between us. I'd lived in this city long enough to know it, to understand what it meant. Everyone did, even if no one spoke it above a whisper. I started, but Rosa cut me off again. "The bracelet you pawned this morning. Word travels fast in this neighborhood, honey. The jeweler made some calls, and the Panicuccis, they don't forget, they don't forgive, and they don't stop looking for what's theirs." My arms tightened around Noah instinctively. He was left in the trash, like garbage. Whoever his family is, you don't know what happened. Maybe he was taken. Maybe someone's grieving him. Maybe... She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're painting a target on your back. On his back. These aren't people who ask polite questions, Lisa." "Then what do I do?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Broken. The voice of someone who'd run out of options months ago and was still somehow being asked to choose. Rosa's expression softened. She reached out, touched Noah's head with one calloused hand. "The smart thing? Turn him in. Anonymous tip. Walk away. And the right thing? I don't know if there is a right thing here, honey. Sometimes there's just survival." She left me in the office with a bag of formula and the kind of hug that said goodbye without words. When I emerged, the kitchen was preparing for the dinner service, and through the front window I could see what Rosa had been talking about. Posters on telephone poles and storefront windows and bus shelters, black and white, professionally printed, impossible to miss. Missing. Infant son of the Panicucci family. Substantial reward for information below the text, a photo. A newborn, maybe a day old, in hospital blankets. I couldn't see enough detail to be certain, but something in the shape of his face made my breath catch. I ducked my head and hurried past, Noah hidden inside my coat, my heart hammering against my ribs. 300 kilometers away, in an office above a legitimate shipping company that laundered money from a dozen illegal enterprises, a phone rang. Vittorio answered on the first ring. "Yes, we got something." The voice on the other end belonged to the jeweler on Via Mercato. Silver bracelet, the crest engraved with A. Panicucci. Vittorio sat up straighter, his hand already reaching for the notepad on his desk. "When?" "This morning. Young woman, homeless by the look of her, had a baby with her, maybe 2 months old. You have a name?" She signed the pawn slip. Could be fake, they usually are. But I got photos of the bracelet, and a pause. I got her on the security camera. Clear shot of her face. The baby too. Send everything to this number, within the hour. Vittorio rattled off a secure address. "And the bracelet?" "Locked in my safe. Keep it that way. You'll be compensated." Vittorio ended the call and stared at the notepad where he'd written, in precise capital letters, "A. Panicucci. He picked up another phone, this one a direct line to a villa in the hills where a man who didn't sleep anymore waited for news that had become his only reason for breathing. "Sir," Vittorio said when the line connected, "we have a lead." On the other end, silence. Then, "Tell me." "A bracelet. The infant's bracelet. Pawned this morning on Via Mercato by a young woman with a baby. We're getting photos now." More silence. When Azeglio Panicucci finally spoke, his voice was the quiet that came before violence. "Find her." In his office, Vittorio circled the name A. Panicucci on his notepad once, twice, 3 times. Then he reached for his encrypted laptop and began the work of hunting a homeless woman who'd made the mistake of trying to save a life she didn't understand she'd already changed forever. 3 months later. You learn to become invisible when the world is looking for you. I learned which shelters didn't keep records, which soup kitchens didn't have cameras, which alleys the police patrol skipped. I learned to change my hair, my route, the stores where I bought formula. I learned to keep moving, keep my head down, keep Noah quiet and hidden beneath layers of donated coats and secondhand scarves. But mostly, I learned that loving someone made you vulnerable in ways poverty never could. Noah's first laugh came on a Tuesday morning in February in the basement of St. Catherine's Shelter. I was changing his diaper on a cot that smelled like industrial detergent and too many bodies, making faces to keep him from crying. Then he did it. A real laugh, bubbly and pure, lighting up his whole face. I froze. That sound more valuable than anything I'd ever owned. "Do that again," I whispered, tickling his belly. And he did. Again and again, until the woman on the next cot told me to keep it down. Some people were trying to sleep. I didn't care. For those few minutes, we weren't homeless and hunted. We were just a mother and her son, sharing a moment that belonged only to us. The posters multiplied like weeds. They evolved too. The original hospital photo replaced by an age progression image showing what the missing Panicucci heir might look like at 3 months, then 6. The reward climbed. €5,000, then 10, then 20. A number that could change lives in neighborhoods where people survived on hope and spare change. I saw my neighbors looking at Noah differently, calculating, wondering. We never stayed anywhere more than 3 nights. 5 months later. By July, Noah was trying to crawl. We were camped under the Ponte Vecchio by then, in a community of 12 others who'd found temporary refuge in the hollow spaces beneath the bridge. It wasn't safe. Police swept through every few weeks, confiscating tents and belongings. But it was cooler than the shelters, and the river noise covered the sound of a fussy baby. I'd laid out a blanket someone had donated, creating a small clean space in the dirt. Noah rocked on his hands and knees, determined, his face scrunched with concentration. I watched him from where I was hand-washing diapers in a bucket, my heart swelling with pride and breaking simultaneously. He needed space to grow. Toys, stability, everything I couldn't give him. "Come on, baby," I encouraged softly. "You can do it." He lurched forward, face planted, then sat up with an indignant expression that made me laugh despite everything. His hair had grown in dark and curly, his eyes the same deep brown that had looked up at me that first night. He was beautiful and perfect, and so far from the life he should have had. "Lisa." I looked up to find Marcus, one of the other bridge residents, approaching with his usual cautious distance. He was maybe 40, weathered by streets and substances, but he'd shown us small kindnesses, a shared can of soup, warning when police were coming. "Yeah?" Those men came by again, the ones in the nice cars. His eyes flicked to Noah, asking about babies, showing pictures. Ice settled in my stomach. When? Hour ago. Worked their way down from the north end, offering money for information. I was already gathering our things, blanket, diapers, the 3 threadbare outfits Noah owned, everything we had fit in my backpack and a plastic shopping bag. Thanks, Marcus. He nodded, already turning away. On the streets, you learn not to ask questions, not to get involved. Survival was a solitary sport. I strapped Noah against my chest with a donated baby carrier and headed south, away from the bridge, into the maze of streets where I could disappear for another few days. Behind me, I didn't see the man in the tailored suit emerge from a black sedan parked 2 blocks away, phone pressed to his ear, reporting to Vittorio that the lead under the bridge had been another dead end. But they were getting closer. Both of us could feel it. In his office overlooking the city, Vittorio spread surveillance photos across his desk like tarot cards reading an inevitable future. 4 months of searching had produced a pattern. Sightings clustered in the eastern districts, the shelters, the free clinics, the places where the desperate went to survive. A young woman, always alone, always with an infant. Different hair colors, different clothes, but the same eyes in every grainy security photo. And the baby. Always bundled, always hidden, but in 3 photos they'd caught glimpses of his face. Vittorio had run those images through facial recognition, comparing them to the hospital photo of the missing Panicucci heir. 83% match. Not certain, but close enough to keep looking. He picked up his phone and scrolled to the message from his contact at the soup kitchen on Via Santo. New security system installed. Cameras at every entrance now. High definition. Vittorio smiled, an expression that held no warmth. Just a matter of time, he murmured to the empty office. 8 months later. Noah took his first steps in October, almost a year to the day after I'd found him. We were in the courtyard behind San Marco Church, where Father Giuseppe let homeless families gather during afternoon hours. Noah had been cruising along the stone bench, using it for balance, when he suddenly let go and lurched toward me, 1 step, 2 steps, 3, before falling into my arms. I caught him, laughing and crying at the same time, this impossible joy blooming in my chest despite everything. You did it, Noah. You did it. He beamed up at me, proud of himself, already pulling away to try again. I'd bought him shoes from a thrift store the week before. Tiny sneakers with cartoon dinosaurs, worn but functional. He stomped in them now like a little king claiming his kingdom. Again, I encouraged, positioning him a few feet away. Walk to Mama. He came, wobbling and determined, and I gathered him up and spun him around until he shrieked with laughter. An old woman sitting nearby smiled at us. Bella, she said. Beautiful boy. How old? Almost 1, I said, the lie automatic. I'd started telling people he was younger than he was, trying to throw off anyone comparing him to the age progression posters. And so happy with his mama, the woman continued. You can see the love. I held Noah tighter, letting myself believe it for just a moment, that we were normal, that I was really his mama, that we had a future beyond running and hiding and constant fear. Then I saw them. 2 police officers entering the courtyard, stopping to talk to Father Giuseppe. One of them held a tablet, showing him something. The priest shook his head, gesturing around at the scattered people, but his eyes found me for just a second before looking away. A warning. I was already moving, Noah against my hip, walking slowly toward the side exit. Not running. Running attracted attention, but purposeful. A mother with somewhere to be. "Excuse me, miss." I kept walking, pretending I hadn't heard. "Miss with the baby?" I turned, forcing my expression into polite confusion. "Yes?" The younger officer approached, his partner hanging back near Father Giuseppe. He had kind eyes, which somehow made it worse. "We're asking everyone. There's been reports of found children in the area, babies without proper documentation. You have a birth certificate for your son?" "At home," I said smoothly. "Why?" He pulled out the tablet, showing me a poster I'd seen 100 times. "We're looking for this child. Missing for almost a year now. Family's desperate to find him." I looked at the age progression image, Noah's face staring back at me, close enough to raise questions. "That's terrible," I managed. "I hope they find him." "How old is your son?" 8 months. He glanced at Noah, who was chewing on his fist, then back at the poster. I could see him calculating, comparing. Noah was big for his age, could easily pass for older than I was claiming. "Where's home?" the officer asked. "San Lorenzo, district. We're just here for the afternoon meal." "Name?" "Maria Benedetti." Another lie, smooth as silk now. He wrote it down, and I knew it wouldn't check out if he ran it. But I was betting on him not bothering, betting on there being 10 other women to question, betting on the sheer volume of desperate people in this city making us all invisible. "Okay," he said finally. "Sorry to bother you. Just doing our job." "Of course. I hope you find him." I walked away at the same measured pace, feeling his eyes on my back. Only when I'd rounded the corner did I allow myself to run. The streets talked. In the shelters, at the soup kitchens, under the bridges, everyone had heard about Azeglio Panicucci, about his grief, about his rage, about what happened to people who'd been caught withholding information. "Heard he executed one of his own guys," Marcus told me one night, his voice low. We were in line at the Via Santo soup kitchen, November rain drumming on the tin roof. Guy was supposed to be searching the North District, but he was skimming the budget instead. Panicucci found out. "What happened?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Found him in the river." Message to everyone else. I pulled Noah closer, his warm weight against my chest the only thing keeping me grounded. "They say he's obsessed," Marcus continued. "Won't sleep, won't eat. Just sits in that villa and waits for news. Some people think the kid's dead, but Panicucci, he won't believe it. Keeps saying he'll find his son if he has to burn the whole city down." The line shuffled forward. Around us, other desperate people murmured similar stories. The Mafia boss who'd gone feral with grief, the reward that kept climbing, the methodical search that missed nothing. 25,000 euro now, someone behind us whispered, for information leading to the child. 25,000. Enough to start over. Enough to never be hungry again. I felt eyes on me, on Noah, and knew that every day we survived was borrowed time. Vittorio's breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The soup kitchen on Via Santo had updated their security system in September, and the director, an older woman named Rosa De Luca, had been cooperative when approached. She ran a clean operation, nothing to hide, happy to help find a missing child. She'd given them access to 2 months of footage. Vittorio sat in his darkened office, reviewing the files frame by frame. Hours of desperate people cycling through, the homeless, the addicted, the broken. Faces that blurred together in a parade of urban tragedy. Then, at timestamp 1842 on October 23rd, she appeared. Young woman, mid-20s, dark hair pulled back. Thin, wearing layers of donated clothes, and in her arms, turned slightly toward the camera as she accepted a bowl of soup. A child. Almost 1 year old. Dark curls, deep brown eyes. Vittorio froze the frame and zoomed in. The resemblance hit him like a physical blow. Not to the baby in the hospital photo, to the portrait that hung in Azeglio's private study. The one of his late wife Julia holding their newborn son hours after birth. Same eyes, same curve of the cheek, same small, perfect mouth. He pulled up the woman's face, ran it through their database. No criminal record, no matches. But she appeared in 17 different frames across 6 visits to the soup kitchen, always with the child, always careful, always watchful. Vittorio reached for his phone but paused. He'd brought Azeglio false hope before, 6 times in 10 months. Each time had carved something else out of the man he'd served for 15 years. This time needed to be certain. He compiled the footage, cross-referenced it with the pawn shop photos from 11 months ago, ran facial recognition on both the woman and the child. Then he made the call. "Sir," Vittorio said when Azeglio answered, "I need you to look at something. I think we found him." 9 days later. Rosa pulled me aside the moment I entered the soup kitchen. "Pantry, now." Her tone made my blood freeze. I followed her through the kitchen, past volunteers preparing the evening meal, into the small storage pantry where she kept dried goods and canned vegetables. She closed the door and turned to me, her face pale. "They're outside. Right now. Black SUVs, 3 of them, parked across the street." My arms tightened around Noah automatically. Who do you think?" She gripped my shoulders. "Lisa, I tried. When they showed me the security footage, I tried to say I didn't know you. But they knew. They knew you came here 6 times. They have every visit documented." "Security footage?" The words came out strangled. "Rosa, you said—" "I know what I said. But the system got upgraded and I didn't think—" She shook her head, anguish in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Through the pantry's small window, I could see the street. 3 black Escalades, exactly as she'd described. Tinted windows, engines running, the kind of vehicles that said money and power and danger. As I watched, a man emerged from the lead car, tall, elegant in a dark suit, moving with the controlled precision of someone trained in violence. He approached one of the volunteers at the entrance, showing something, a photo probably. The volunteer pointed toward the kitchen. "Back exit," Rosa said urgently, already moving. "Through the alley. I'll tell them you left an hour ago. Rosa! Go, now! Before—" The kitchen door swung open. The man in the suit stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 others. His eyes found me immediately, took in Noah against my chest, and something in his expression shifted. "Lisa Randi," he said. Not a question. "My name is Vittorio. I work for Azeglio Panicucci. We need to talk." Noah, sensing my fear, began to whimper. I backed against the pantry shelves, my mind racing through impossible options. The window was too small. The door was blocked. Rosa stood frozen beside me, her earlier protection useless against this. "I'm not—" I started. "This isn't—" "We're not here to hurt you," Vittorio interrupted, his voice calm. Too calm. "We're here about the child. He's mine. We both know that's not true." My hand went to Noah's head, covering it protectively. "I found him. In the trash. Left to die. If his family wanted him, they shouldn't have—" "His family has been searching for him for 11 months, Vittorio cut in. "Every day, every hour, turning this city upside down, and now we've found him." He took a step forward, and I saw Rosa move instinctively between us. "Don't," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Don't you dare touch that girl." Vittorio's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. "Mr. Panicucci is waiting. He'd like to meet the woman who's been caring for his son." The words hung in the air, polite, reasonable, and absolutely terrifying. "And if I say no?" Vittorio's expression didn't change. "That's not an option." Outside, through the kitchen window, I saw more men emerging from the SUVs. 6, 8, maybe more, surrounding the building with the casual efficiency of people who'd done this before. Noah was crying now, full tears, sensing my fear and reflecting it back. I rocked him automatically, whispering useless comfort, my mind spinning through outcomes that all ended the same way. Caught. Finally, inevitably caught. "I won't let you hurt him," I said, my voice breaking. "Whatever happens to me, you can't." "Hurt him?" Vittorio's eyebrows rose. "Miss Randi, you misunderstand. Azeglio Panicucci has spent 11 months trying to find his son. The last thing he wants is to hurt the woman who kept him alive." He extended his hand, not threatening, almost gentle. "Please, he's waiting." I ran. It was stupid, reckless, impossible. Vittorio stood between me and the exit. His men surrounded the building. There was nowhere to go. But when he extended that hand, something primal took over. The same instinct that had kept me alive on the streets for over a year. The same fierce protectiveness that had made me lift a freezing baby from the trash. I bolted. Rosa, bless her, moved faster than a woman her age should. She grabbed a tray of dishes from the counter and hurled it at Vittorio's feet. Ceramic exploded across the floor in a crash that made everyone in the kitchen freeze. "Run!" she screamed at me. I didn't need to be told twice. I clutched Noah against my chest and sprinted through the kitchen, past startled volunteers, toward the service exit I'd scouted months ago, the one opening I'd memorized like a prayer. Behind me, I heard Vittorio shouting orders, boots on tile, Rosa's voice raised in defiant Italian cursing. The exit door slammed open under my shoulder. Cold November air hit my face as I burst into the alley, Noah screaming against my chest, my lungs already burning. Left or right? Left led to the main street, too open. Right toward the market district, crowds, places to disappear. I went right, running full out, my worn shoes slapping against wet cobblestones. Noah's cries tore at my heart, but I couldn't stop, couldn't slow down, couldn't. A black SUV screeched around the corner ahead, cutting off my escape. I spun, reverse direction, muscles screaming. Another alley, this one narrow enough that cars couldn't follow. I ducked into it, jumping over trash bags and puddles, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind me, car doors slammed. Footsteps. Multiple sets, coordinated, getting closer. The alley opened onto a small piazza. Market stalls, afternoon shoppers, the blessed camouflage of normal life. I forced myself to slow to a fast walk, pulling my hood up, ducking my head. Just another mother with a fussy baby. Nothing to see. I wove through the crowd, past vegetable stands and flower carts, constantly checking over my shoulder. No sign of pursuit, but I knew they were there. Watching, waiting. A bus idled at the corner, doors still open. I jumped on just as they started to close, collapsing into the first seat, my whole body shaking. Noah had quieted to hiccuping sobs, his little fist clutched in my shirt. Through the window I saw them, two of Vittorio's men scanning the piazza, one speaking urgently into a phone. The bus pulled away. I rode it to the end of the line, got off, caught another going the opposite direction. Standard evasion, muscle memory from months of running. By the time I finally stopped, night had fallen, and I was on the south side of the city, miles from the soup kitchen, with no plan and nowhere to go. The Santa Maria shelter didn't ask questions. It was one of the older ones, run by nuns who'd taken vows of service that apparently included selective blindness. You gave a name, any name, and they gave you a bed for 3 nights. After that, you had to leave for a week before coming back. I'd been here twice before, months ago, before the posters got so widespread. I was gambling they didn't keep good records, that the nun at the intake desk wouldn't recognize me, that I could buy 3 nights to figure out what to do next. Name? The elderly nun didn't look up from her ledger. Maria Russo. I'd abandoned Benedetti after using it with the police. Child's name? Marco. I'd stopped using Noah in public weeks ago. Too distinctive, too memorable. She assigned me bed 47 in the women's dormitory, a narrow cot in a room with 30 others. I claimed it quickly, spreading out our few possessions to mark the territory, then took Noah to the communal bathroom to change his diaper and try to calm him down. He was still shaken from the chase, his eyes too wide, his little body tense even as I rocked him. At 14 months, he was old enough now to sense danger, to feel my fear and mirror it back. "I'm sorry," I whispered, against his hair. "I'm so sorry, baby. I know you're scared. I'm scared too." He looked up at me with those deep brown eyes, his father's eyes, though I'd tried not to think about that, and touched my face with one small hand. "Mama," he said clearly. It was one of his few words, and it destroyed me every time. "Yeah, baby, Mama's here. Mama's got you." I held him until he relaxed, until his breathing evened out, until he fell asleep against my shoulder with the absolute trust that broke my heart. Back at our cot, I laid him down carefully and took inventory. My backpack held 2 changes of clothes for Noah, 1 for me, 3 diapers, half a container of formula, a nearly empty bottle of infant acetaminophen, and €17. €17. Not enough for a week in a hostel. Not enough for a bus ticket to another city. Barely enough for formula to last 3 days. I sat on the edge of the cot, head in my hands, and tried to think through the exhaustion and fear. They knew my face now. Vittorio had seen me clearly, probably had me on camera, definitely had descriptions circulating. Every shelter, every soup kitchen, every place I'd depended on for survival was now compromised. I couldn't go back to Rosa's kitchen, couldn't risk the free clinic, couldn't use any of the resources that had kept Noah and me alive, which meant I had maybe 3 days before we were on the street with nothing. My hand went to my pocket, to the pawn ticket I'd kept for 11 months. The bracelet. €250 when I'd sold it, but probably worth more now that they knew what it was. I could try to reclaim it, sell it somewhere else for real money. No, that was insane. The pawn shop was definitely being watched. Probably had been for months. "Lisa?" I looked up to find a young woman standing beside my cot. Early 20s, blonde, painfully thin. It took me a moment to place her, Elena, from the bridge community. She'd been pregnant last time I'd seen her. "Elena, hey." I glanced around. "You had the baby?" Her expression shuddered. "Lost her. 6 weeks ago. I'm sorry." The words felt hollow, insufficient. She shrugged, that street-hardened gesture that meant the grief was too big to show. Her eyes went to Noah, sleeping peacefully, and something flickered across her face. "He's gotten big," she said. "Yeah, growing like a weed." Must be expensive. Formula, diapers, all that. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. We manage. I saw the posters, Elena continued, her voice carefully casual. The missing Panicucci baby. Rewards up to 30,000 now. My heart stopped. 30,000 euro, she repeated, watching my face. Can you imagine? What someone could do with that kind of money? Get clean, start over, never be hungry again. I stood slowly, positioning myself between her and Noah. Elena, he looks like the age progression photo, she said. Same eyes, same hair. You're wrong. Am I? She took a step closer. Because I remember you showing up with him last year. Out of nowhere. You never talk about his father, never have any family visit. And you run every time someone asks too many questions. Around us, other women were starting to pay attention. I could feel their eyes, their calculations, the same math Elena was doing. 30,000 euro. He's mine, I said quietly. And if you turn me in, you'll be condemning a child to whatever family left him in the trash to die. Or returning him to a family that's been searching for him for a year. Elena's voice hardened. You ever think about that? That maybe you're not the hero in this story? The question hit like a physical blow because I had thought about it. Every day, every night, every time I saw the anguish in the posters, the escalating reward, the implications of a family desperate enough to burn the city down searching. But then I remembered the baby wrapped in silk and left beside garbage, the fever I'd nursed him through, the first laugh, the first steps, the small miracle of watching him grow against all odds. Please, I whispered. Elena, please, don't do this. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind her eyes. Survival versus conscience. Money versus mercy. Finally, she shook her head and walked away, but I knew I couldn't stay. Couldn't risk her changing her mind or someone else making the same connection or the walls closing in while I slept. I packed our things in silence, ignoring the watching eyes, the whispered conversations. Noah stirred as I lifted him, but didn't wake. Small mercies. The nun at the desk tried to stop me as I headed for the exit. You just got here. It's not safe out there at night. We have to go. At least wait until morning. Please. But morning might be too late. I pushed through the door into the November cold, Noah bundled against my chest, 17 euro in my pocket, and no idea where to go next. Vittorio took the call at 11 p.m., just as he was reviewing security footage from the bus terminals. We got a hit, his man said. Santa Maria shelter on the south side. Woman matching the description checked in this evening with a young child, going by Maria Russo. You're certain? 80%. The nun at the desk is checking the dormitory now. Vittorio was already grabbing his coat, his keys. Don't let her leave. Quietly. No sirens, no scene. Just watch the exits until I get there. He made it across the city in 18 minutes, breaking every speed limit. 2 of his men were waiting outside the shelter when he arrived. She's gone, one reported. Left about 40 minutes ago on foot, headed east. Vittorio's jaw tightened. Surveillance? Got her on the street camera 2 blocks over, then lost her in the market district. He pulled out his phone and called Azeglio. It was late, but the boss didn't sleep anymore anyway. We had her, Vittorio said without preamble. Soup kitchen, then a shelter. She's running, but she's running scared. Limited resources. She can't hide much longer. I want every shelter watched. Azeglio's voice was hoarse from disuse. Every church, every free clinic, every place she might go. I want her found, Vittorio. Tonight. Yes, sir. And Vittorio? A pause. When you find her, don't frighten her more than necessary. She kept my son alive. I haven't forgotten that. Vittorio ended the call and turned to his men. Grid search. Eastern districts. She's on foot with an infant. She can't have gone far. I walked until Noah got too heavy, then found a 24-hour cafe and bought a cup of tea I couldn't afford just to sit somewhere warm for an hour. The few other patrons gave me wary looks. A homeless woman and a baby didn't fit their late-night aesthetic, but no one asked me to leave. Noah woke up around midnight, feverish again. Not burning up like last time, but warm enough to worry me. I felt his forehead, his neck, checked his breathing. Upper respiratory thing, probably. The cold weather, the stress, the constant moving, his little immune system couldn't keep up. He needed medicine, needed to see a doctor. I counted my money again. €17. Infant acetaminophen would cost $8 at the all-night pharmacy. That left $9 for everything else. The choice was binary, medicine or food, his health or my energy to keep running. Not really a choice at all. I left the cafe and found a pharmacy 3 blocks away, fluorescent bright in the darkness. The clerk barely looked at me as I counted out exact change for the generic acetaminophen. I dosed Noah right there in the aisle, whispering apologies as he cried at the taste. €9 left. Enough for a small container of formula. I bought the cheapest brand, the one I usually avoided because it made Noah gassy, and walked back out into the cold. The streets were mostly empty now, just occasional cars and the night shift workers heading home. I found a church with a covered doorway and settled there, Noah in my lap, trying to decide what to do when morning came. Leave the city entirely? But how? With no money and no transportation? Find a different shelter? But they were all being watched now, I was certain of it. Sleep rough until things died down, but Noah was sick, and November was only getting colder. Every option led to a dead end. I'm sorry, I whispered to Noah, who'd fallen back asleep against my chest. I'm so sorry I can't give you more than this. My eyes burned with exhaustion and tears I couldn't afford to shed. Everything hurt. My feet from walking, my back from carrying Noah, my heart from the impossible weight of loving someone I was failing. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, weak dawn light was filtering through the buildings and Noah was crying from hunger. I fed him the cheap formula in a bottle I'd rinsed in the churches, outdoor fountain, trying not to think about bacteria or proper sterilization. He drank it down greedily, and I was grateful he was too young to know the difference between this and the better brand. My own stomach cramped with hunger. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. Yesterday morning? The day before? Time blurred when you were running. I needed to get to a soup kitchen, but they'd be watching those. Needed to contact Rosa, but her kitchen was definitely compromised. Needed help, but had no one left to ask. That's when I thought of Father Giuseppe at San Marco. He'd always been kind, had let us stay in the courtyard, had never asked too many questions. His church was miles away, in a district Vittorio's men might not be watching yet. If I could get there, maybe he'd let me stay in one of the back rooms. Just for a few days, just until... Until what? Until Azeglio Panicucci stopped looking for his son? That would never happen. But I was out of options. I walked. It took 3 hours to reach San Marco, stopping frequently to rest, to adjust Noah's weight, to dose him again with acetaminophen when his fever spiked. By the time I reached the church, my legs were shaking and the world had started to tilt in concerning ways. When was the last time I'd had water? The church courtyard was empty. Too early yet for the afternoon meal service. I made my way to the side door that led to Father Giuseppe's office and knocked softly. No answer. I tried the handle. Locked. Okay, I said to Noah, to myself, to God if he was listening. Okay, we'll wait. I sank down against the wall beside the door, Noah in my lap, my backpack as a cushion. Just for a minute. Just to rest my eyes while we waited for Father Giuseppe to arrive. Just for a minute. I woke to the sound of car engines. My eyes flew open, instinct screaming danger before my conscious mind caught up. The courtyard wasn't empty anymore. 3 black SUVs blocked the entrance, their polished surfaces reflecting the late morning sun. How long had I slept? I struggled to my feet, Noah clutched against my chest, looking for an exit. But there were men at every gate, watching with the patient calm of people who knew their prey was cornered. And walking across the courtyard, moving with that same controlled precision I'd seen at the soup kitchen, was Vittorio. I backed against the church door, my hand going automatically to the handle. Still locked. Lisa. Vittorio's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. It's over. Stop running. No! My voice came out broken, desperate. Please, you don't understand. I understand you found an infant left to die and did everything you could to save him. He stopped a few feet away, hands visible, non-threatening. I understand you've kept him alive for nearly a year, with nothing but determination and love, and I understand you're terrified. Noah was crying, sensing my fear, his small hands fisting in my coat. He wasn't wanted, I said, the words tumbling out. Someone left him in the trash, in the cold. If his family cared, they wouldn't have. His family didn't abandon him, Vittorio interrupted. He was taken, stolen by someone who wanted to hurt Azeglio Panicucci the only way that would truly wound him, through his child. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Then why was he in an alley? Why was he left to die? We don't know yet. But what we do know is that a man has spent 11 months tearing this city apart looking for his son. A man who's killed for less than loyalty, but who's offering you safe passage in exchange for the truth. Safe passage. The words of someone who could easily offer the opposite. I don't believe you. Vittorio's expression shifted to something like sympathy. You don't have to. But you're out of options, Lisa. Out of money, out of places to hide, out of strength. I can see it in your eyes. He was right, and we both knew it. If I go with you, I said quietly, what happens to Noah? You mean, what happens to Alessandro? Vittorio's voice softened. He goes home to his father, and you answer some questions. Tell us how you found him, what you know. And then, that's up to Mr. Panicucci. Not exactly reassuring. I looked down at Noah, Alessandro, the child I'd named and loved and tried to save. His fever had broken, the medicine working, his cheeks already less flushed. He looked up at me with complete trust. This little boy who'd called me Mama, who'd taken his first steps toward my outstretched hands. Will you promise me something? I asked Vittorio. If I can. Whatever happens to me, he's had his shots, but he needs to finish the antibiotics course 3 more days. And he doesn't like the cheap formula. It makes him gassy. The name brand is better. And he has nightmares sometimes. Needs someone to hold him until he calms down. And he's learning to talk. You have to encourage him. Read to him, even if he doesn't seem to understand. My voice broke. Vittorio's expression had shifted to something I couldn't read. You can tell his father yourself. Promise me, I insisted. Promise me someone will take care of him properly. I promise. I didn't believe him, but what choice did I have? I kissed Noah's forehead, breathing in his scent, baby shampoo from 3 days ago and formula, and something uniquely him. I love you, I whispered. No matter what happens, you remember that Mama loves you. Then I looked up at Vittorio and nodded. He gestured to one of the SUVs, and 2 men approached. Not grabbing, not forcing, just escorting. I walked between them on shaking legs, still holding Noah, unable to let go even now. They opened the back door of the lead vehicle. The interior was all leather and tinted windows and climate control, a different world from the one I'd been surviving in. I climbed in, Noah on my lap, and Vittorio slid in beside me. The door closed with a soft, final click. "Where are we going?" I asked as the SUV pulled away from the church. Vittorio was already on his phone, typing something. He finished and looked up at me. "To meet the man you've been running from," he said. "Azeglio Panicucci wants to know who saved his son's life." The SUV merged into traffic, and I watched through tinted windows as the city slid past. The streets I'd survived on, the alleys I'd slept in, the life I'd barely cobbled together now receding into memory. Noah made a small sound and nestled against my chest, his trust absolute, his world secure as long as I held him. I tightened my arms around him and tried not to think about how many minutes I had left before someone took him away forever. The drive took 40 minutes, but felt like hours. I watched the city transform through tinted windows, familiar streets giving way to unfamiliar ones, the urban decay I knew dissolving into manicured neighborhoods where homeless women didn't exist. Trees appeared, perfectly spaced. Gates materialized, ornate and forbidding. The buildings grew larger, farther apart, protected by walls that said, "Keep out," in a dozen silent ways. Vittorio made calls in rapid Italian, his voice low and controlled. I caught fragments. "Yes, we have her," and "the child is with her," and 20 minutes. But mostly I focused on breathing, on keeping my rising panic from transferring to Noah. Alessandro. His real name was Alessandro. The child in my arms played with my fingers, oblivious to the fact that everything was about to change. He babbled something that might have been "Mama," and I had to close my eyes against the fresh wave of grief. "Where are we going?" I asked again, my voice steadier than I felt. "The Panicucci estate," Vittorio said, pocketing his phone. "North of the city. He lives in a villa, among other properties." Of course he did. Men who ran empires didn't live in apartments. They lived in fortresses. "What's he like?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Vittorio considered for a moment. "Disciplined, intelligent, dangerous when crossed." He paused. "And destroyed by the loss of his son. If he loved him so much, why was Alessandro left in an alley to die? That's what he wants to know." The SUV turned onto a private road, and suddenly we were gliding between marble pillars and through gates that whispered open at our approach. The villa emerged from landscaped grounds like something from a film. 3 stories of old-world elegance, creamstone and arched windows, covered in climbing vines that probably cost more to maintain than I'd earned in my entire life. My stomach clenched. This was Alessandro's world. Not alleys and shelters, not cheap formula and second-hand clothes. This. The SUV pulled into a circular drive and stopped before massive wooden doors. Vittorio opened his door, then came around to mine, extending his hand like I was a guest instead of a prisoner. I didn't take it. Just climbed out on my own, Alessandro heavy in my arms, and stared up at the villa that might as well have been a different planet. "This way," Vittorio said gently. The doors opened as we approached. Servants, I realized. Actual servants. A woman in formal dress nodded to Vittorio, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me and the baby, but she said nothing. Professional discretion, probably. The interior made me want to disappear. Marble floors stretched in every direction, reflecting afternoon light from chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses. Art hung on the walls. Real art. The kind I'd only seen in museums. Everything whispered money, power, a life so far removed from mine we might have been different species. I was suddenly, painfully aware of my appearance. When had I last showered? My clothes were donations, worn thin and stained. My hair needed washing. I probably smelled like the streets I'd been sleeping on. Alessandro, at least, was clean. I'd made sure of that always. Even when I went hungry, even when we slept in filth, I'd kept him as clean and cared for as possible. It would have to be enough. "Wait here," Vittorio said, gesturing to a room off the main hall. It was a library, floor-to-ceiling books, leather furniture, a fireplace that could have fit my entire tarp shelter inside it. I stood in the center, not daring to sit on anything with my dirty clothes, and tried to control my breathing. This was it. The end of the line. In a few minutes, I'd meet the man I'd been running from for 11 months, and he'd decide what happened next. What happened to Alessandro? What happened to me? Alessandro started to fuss, picking up on my tension. I rocked him automatically, humming that old lullaby, trying to give him one last moment of security before everything shattered. Stella stellina, la notte si avvicina. Footsteps in the hall. Multiple sets. Coming closer. My heart hammered against my ribs. The door opened. Vittorio entered first, followed by 2 other men in suits. And then Azeglio Panicucci stepped into the library, and the air itself seemed to change. He was tall, maybe 6'2", dressed in perfectly tailored black that probably cost more than I'd see in a lifetime. Dark hair, graying at the temples, a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't carved from grief and rage. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Dark, intelligent, carrying a weight that made my breath catch. This was a man who could order deaths with a word, who commanded an empire built on fear, who'd been searching for his son with the kind of relentless obsession that leveled obstacles. And he was staring at Alessandro like he was seeing a ghost. No one spoke. The moment stretched, fragile and terrible. Then Azeglio moved, crossing the distance between us in 3 strides, and I stumbled backward on instinct, my arms tightening around Alessandro protectively. "Don't," I heard myself say. "Don't touch him." Azeglio stopped, his eyes snapping to mine. Up close, I could see the signs of his grief, the hollows beneath his eyes, the lines that hadn't been there in the photos I'd glimpsed, the particular exhaustion of someone who'd stopped sleeping months ago. "Let me see him," he said. His voice was rough, barely controlled. "No, that's my son." "I don't know that." The words came out stronger than I felt. "All I know is someone left him to die, and I kept him alive. That makes him mine." Something flickered across Azeglio's face. Surprise, maybe, that a homeless woman would dare challenge him. "You think I abandoned him?" His voice dropped dangerously low. "You think I left my child beside trash? I don't know what to think. But I found him there, wrapped in silk and left like garbage. So either you did it, or you failed to protect him. Either way, show me his left shoulder." The command cut through my building anger. "What?" "His left shoulder. There's a birthmark, crescent-shaped, about the size of a thumbprint." My blood went cold. "Show me," Azeglio repeated, his voice cracking slightly on the words. "Please." My hands trembled as I adjusted Alessandro's position, carefully lifting his shirt. There, on his left shoulder blade, exactly as Azeglio had described, was a small crescent birthmark. I'd seen it hundreds of times, while bathing him, changing him, checking him for rashes or injuries. Just another detail of the child I'd learned by heart. But watching Azeglio's face as he saw it, watching his composure shatter completely, I understood what it meant. Proof. Undeniable, absolute proof. "Alessandro," Azeglio whispered, the name breaking on his tongue like a prayer. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, his hands shaking as he held it out to me. I looked. The photo showed a woman, beautiful, dark-haired, glowing, in a hospital bed, holding a newborn. The woman's face was filled with such pure joy it hurt to see. And the baby in her arms? I looked down at Alessandro, then back at the photo. The same eyes, the same small mouth, the same way his left ear curved slightly at the top. "My wife," Azeglio said hoarsely. "Julia. She died 8 days after he was born. Complications from the birth. I was—" His voice failed. He tried again. "I was arranging her funeral when he disappeared. Someone took him from his nursery. From guards, from security, from everything I'd built to keep him safe. And I've spent every day since trying to find him." The raw anguish in his voice was too real to be manufactured. I'd heard enough lies on the streets to recognize truth when it hit me. "I found him in an alley," I said quietly, "behind Francesco's trattoria. It was raining. He was so cold, and he was crying, and there was no one. Just him and the trash and that bracelet." "What did you do with the bracelet?" "Pawned it. He was sick, needed medicine. I'm sorry, I tried to keep it safe, but he needed—" "You saved his life." Azeglio's eyes were wet now, unashamed. "You had nothing, and you gave him everything." I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the grief and gratitude warring on his face. Alessandro chose that moment to babble something, reaching out toward Azeglio with one small hand. Not afraid, just curious about this new person in his limited world. Azeglio's breath hitched. "May I?" he asked, the powerful Mafia boss asking permission like a supplicant. Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to run, to keep Alessandro away from this world of wealth and violence and power. But I'd seen the photo, seen the birthmark, seen the truth I'd been running from for 11 months. This was his father. Slowly, carefully, I shifted Alessandro in my arms, angling him toward Azeglio. The moment their eyes met, something passed between them. Some recognition that transcended time and separation. Alessandro studied Azeglio's face with the serious concentration he usually reserved for new foods, then broke into one of his sunshine smiles. "Papa?" he said clearly, testing out the word he'd heard other children use. Azeglio made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Si, Alessandro. Papa." He reached out slowly, telegraphing every movement, and Alessandro grabbed his finger with both small hands, the same way he grabbed mine, the same absolute trust. I watched Azeglio's face transform, the hardness melting, the grief giving way to wonder, the dangerous man disappearing beneath the father who'd thought he'd lost everything. "May I hold him?" Azeglio asked, still looking at me, still asking permission. This was it, the moment of surrender. Once I handed Alessandro over, I lost any claim, any leverage, any reason for them to keep me alive. But looking at them together, at Alessandro's face, so much like his father's, at Azeglio's expression of desperate hope, I knew I didn't have a choice. I'd saved Alessandro so he could live. That meant giving him back to the life he was meant to have, even if it destroyed me. He doesn't like to be held too tight, I heard myself say, my voice distant. And if he starts to cry, rocking helps. Back and forth, steady rhythm. And he just had medicine an hour ago, so his fever should stay down. But if it spikes, Lisa. Azeglio's voice was gentle. I'm not going to hurt him. I know. I did know. Looking at his face, I knew. I need you to know how to take care of him. I lifted Alessandro, pressed a kiss to his forehead. Please remember me. Please know I loved you. And placed him in his father's arms. Azeglio took him like he was made of glass, like he was the most precious thing in the world. Which, I suppose, he was. Alessandro settled against his father's chest without complaint, already secure in the way children are when they sense safety. He reached up and grabbed Azeglio's nose, giggling at his own. Boldness. Azeglio laughed. Actually laughed. The sound rusty but real. Hello, mio figlio, he whispered. I've been looking for you. I stepped back, my arms suddenly devastatingly empty. My whole body felt wrong, missing the weight I'd carried for 11 months, missing the life I'd built my entire world around. Azeglio looked up at me, Alessandro in his arms, and our eyes met. Sit, he said, gesturing to the leather sofa. Not an order exactly, but not a request either. We need to talk. About what? About how I'd kidnapped his son, even if I hadn't known? About what punishment fit my crime? About how to make me disappear without Alessandro ever knowing the woman who'd raised him? But I sat, because what choice did I have? Azeglio sat across from me, Alessandro exploring his face with small hands, babbling commentary in his private language. Tell me everything, Azeglio said, from the beginning. How you found him, what happened, every detail. So I did. I told him about that November night, the rain and the cold and the cry that changed everything, the silk blanket and the silver bracelet, my decision to keep him just for one night, then another, then forever, the fevers and the shelters and the constant running, the first laugh, the first steps, the first time he called me Mama. Azeglio listened without interrupting, his expression shifting through grief and rage, and something I couldn't name. Alessandro fell asleep against his father's chest halfway through my story, completely at peace. When I finished, silence filled the library. Someone in my own organization did this, Azeglio said finally, his voice deadly calm. Someone who knew the security, knew the schedules, knew exactly how to hurt me. Do you know who? I have suspicions. His eyes hardened, and they'll wish they'd killed me instead. The casual promise of violence should have terrified me. Instead, I just felt tired. What happens now? I asked quietly. Azeglio looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. Taking in my worn clothes, my unwashed hair, the signs of 11 months on the streets written on my skin. Now, he said slowly, I find out why the woman who saved my son's life was living under a tarp instead of coming forward. I told you. You told me you found him abandoned, but you're educated. I can hear it in your speech. You were a nurse trainee, Vittorio's research said. You had a life before this. So what happened, Lisa Randi? Why were you in that alley the night you found my son? The question hit harder than I expected, because the answer meant admitting how far I'd fallen, how completely I'd lost everything. But he'd been honest with me, showed me his grief, his truth. I owed him the same. My mother got sick, I said quietly. Cancer. I took time off from my training to care for her. When she died, I couldn't go back. I'd missed too much. Lost my placement at the hospital. Couldn't pay rent without income. I thought I'd find another job, get back on my feet, but everything fell apart faster than I could fix it. 3 months after she died, I was on the streets. And a month after that, I found your son. You had no one. No family. No friends. No one who could help. Or no one who would. Azeglio was quiet for a long moment, his hand absently stroking Alessandro's back. The gesture was so natural, so paternal, it made my chest ache. You could have sold the bracelet for much more than you did, he said. Could have ransomed him. Instead, you spent everything you had to keep him alive. He was a baby. What kind of person would I be if I'd... A practical one. Azeglio's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. But not a good one. I didn't know what to say to that. I owe you a debt, Azeglio continued. You saved my son when everyone else failed. When I failed. That's not something I can repay with money. I don't want money. The words came out fiercer than intended. I just want to know he'll be okay. That someone will love him and take care of him and... My voice cracked. That he'll be happy. Azeglio studied me with those dark, intelligent eyes, and I felt like he could see straight through to my breaking heart. He calls you Mama, he said softly. I couldn't speak, could only nod. And you love him, not because of who his family is or what he could give you, just because he's him. Another nod, tears spilling over now despite my best efforts. Azeglio looked down at his sleeping son, then back at me. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. Then you should stay. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What? Stay. Here. With Alessandro. With us. I can't. The words tangled in my confusion. You've been his mother for almost a year, Azeglio said. The only parent he's ever really known. Taking you away from him now would be cruel, and I've been cruel enough already. You want me to stay? In your house? With... I gestured helplessly at the opulence surrounding us. This isn't my world. I don't belong here. You belong wherever my son needs you to be. Azeglio's voice was firm, and he needs you. I stared at him, at this man whose name made the city whisper, who commanded empires and death with equal ease, offering me a place in his home like it was simple. Why? I whispered. You could hire nannies, caretakers, people who actually know what they're doing. He doesn't need professionals. He needs the woman who chose to save him when she had every reason not to. Azeglio shifted Alessandro slightly, the baby stirring but not waking. You gave him life, Lisa. Twice. Once when you found him. Once when you kept him alive despite everything. That makes you his mother in every way that matters. The words broke something in me. All the fear and exhaustion and grief of the past year came flooding out in tears I couldn't control. I'm sorry, I gasped. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Azeglio's voice was surprisingly gentle. You've earned the right to feel. He waited while I cried, not uncomfortable or impatient, just present. When I finally got control of myself, wiping my face with my dirty sleeve, he spoke again. There are conditions, he said. Of course there were. Nothing came free in this world. What kind of conditions? First, you tell me everything you know about the night you found Alessandro. every detail, no matter how small. Second, you stay on the estate. For now, for safety. Whoever took him might come after you if they learn you have information. Third, he paused. You let me provide for you. Properly. Clothes, food, a room of your own, medical care, no more streets. The offer was staggering, impossible, too much. And in exchange, I asked carefully, you help me raise my son. You teach me what you know about him, his routines, his preferences, what makes him laugh. You don't disappear from his life. Azeglio's eyes were intense. And you testify when I find who did this. You're the only witness to where he was found. That information could be crucial. It was logical, reasonable even. So why did my hands shake as I considered it? I struggled for words. I'm homeless. I have nothing. No skills you'd need. No. You have the one skill that matters, Azeglio interrupted. You know how to love my son without expecting anything in return. That's rarer than you think. Alessandro stirred in his father's arms, making a small sound. Azeglio rocked him automatically, the gesture already becoming natural, and the baby settled back into sleep. How long? I asked. How long would you want me to stay? As long as Alessandro needs you. Azeglio's expression softened. As long as you're willing. I looked at Alessandro, at his small face, his curls, his hands fisted in his father's expensive shirt. I'd thought saying goodbye would happen today, that I'd hand him over and walk away and try to survive the grief. Instead, I was being offered more time, more moments, a chance to watch him grow in safety instead of poverty. But at what cost? What about the world you live in? I asked quietly. I've heard things about your business, about what you do. I can't have Alessandro around. My business stays separate, Azeglio said firmly. Always has. This villa is clean, no meetings, no operations, nothing that touches the other side of my life. Alessandro will be raised away from that. Safe, protected. Can you promise that? I've already failed to protect him once. Azeglio's voice went hard. I won't fail again. On that, you have my word. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the fierce protectiveness in his eyes was real, that Alessandro would be safe here, and I wanted, God help me, I wanted more time with the child I'd named and loved and claimed as mine. Okay, I whispered. I'll stay. Azeglio's shoulders relaxed slightly, relief flickering across his face. Thank you. But if I see anything that puts him in danger, if your world touches his, I'm taking him and we're leaving. I don't care who you are. The threat was absurd. A homeless woman challenging a mafia boss. But Azeglio's lips curved in what might have been respect. Agreed, he said simply. He stood, still cradling Alessandro, and looked down at me. Vittorio will show you to your room. Get cleaned up. Rest. When you're ready, we'll talk more about what happened. But for now... He glanced at his sleeping son. For now, we've both earned some peace. I followed him to the library door, where Vittorio waited with the patience of someone used to his boss's unpredictable schedule. Take care of her, Azeglio told him. Anything she needs. Vittorio nodded, his eyes flicking to me with something like approval. As I followed him through the marble halls, I kept looking back at Azeglio, at Alessandro secure in his father's arms, trying to process the impossibility of what had just happened. I'd come here expecting to lose everything. Instead, I'd been given a room in a villa, safety, and a promise I could barely believe. But as Vittorio showed me to a bedroom that could have fit 4 of my tarp shelters, as I saw the attached bathroom with running water and clean towels, as the reality sank in that I'd gone from the streets to here in a single day. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just walked into a cage, even if the bars were made of silk and kindness. And I had no idea if I'd chosen salvation or made a deal I'd spend the rest of my life trying to escape. The bedroom had a bathtub. I stood in the doorway staring at it, deep, white, clean, with more towels than one person could possibly need. After 11 months of public sinks and shelter showers, it felt like a hallucination. "There are clothes in the closet," Vittorio said behind me. "If you need anything, the house phone reaches staff." Staff. Like that was normal. He left me alone in a room larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in, and the silence was deafening. For 11 months I'd been surrounded by noise, traffic, sirens, the constant hum of survival. Now I had quiet, and I didn't know what to do with it. The bath helped. I spent an hour scrubbing away layers of street dirt and fear, washing my hair 3 times before the water ran clear. The clothes in the closet fit perfectly. Simple, clean, new. When I finally looked in the mirror, I almost recognized myself again. Dinner was in a room designed for 20, but set for 3. Azeglio sat at the head of the table, Alessandro in a high chair beside him. The baby saw me and immediately reached out, babbling excitedly, "Mama! Mama!" I froze. Azeglio's expression flickered. "He's been asking for you. I tried to settle him, but—" Alessandro lunged into my arms the moment I got close, burying his face against my neck with a relieved sigh. "Please sit," Azeglio said quietly. We ate mostly in silence, Alessandro happily shoving pasta into his mouth. Then Azeglio set down his fork. "I need to ask about the night you found him. You said he was behind Francesco's trattoria. What time?" "Late. Maybe 11. Midnight. I didn't have a phone. And he was just lying there. No one else around." "No one. Just the baby and an overturned trash can. The blanket was soaked. He'd been there a while." "The blanket. What did it look like?" "Cream silk. Embroidered corner. I still have it. In my backpack." Azeglio's eyes sharpened. "You kept it?" "It was the nicest thing he had. I thought someday he might want it." He stood abruptly, left, and returned with my backpack. "May I?" I nodded. He extracted the blanket, stained now, worn from a year of use, and spread it on the table. His face went white. "This is from Giulia's trousseau. Custom made. Only 5 exist, and I know where 4 of them are." The implications hit me. "Someone in your house?" "Yes." His voice had gone deadly quiet. "Someone with access to our home." The answers came 3 hours later. I was in the nursery watching Alessandro explore new toys when Vittorio appeared. "We found her." Azeglio entered behind him, his expression carved from ice. "Lisa, come with me. Bring Alessandro." His office held security monitors and an open laptop. Azeglio pressed play on frozen video footage. Black and white, time-stamped from nearly a year ago. A villa hallway. A woman entered the frame, elegant, dark-haired, maybe 40. She moved with purpose, entered the nursery, and emerged moments later carrying a bundle wrapped in silk. An infant. "Serena," Azeglio said, his voice like gravel. "Giulia's cousin. She was staying here after the funeral. I trusted her." Another screen showed text transcripts. "He's grieving. Vulnerable. The timing is perfect. Once the child is gone, he'll fall apart." "She wanted to destroy you," I whispered. "She wanted to take over. With me broken and no heir, she could absorb my operations into her family's. A quiet coup." But why leave him in an alley? Because a body requires investigation. This way, he just disappeared. I'd spend my life searching instead of rebuilding. Azeglio's hands clenched into fists. It was the blanket that gave us the final link. You saved him twice, once from the cold, once by keeping the evidence. A man entered. We found her car abandoned near the coast. She's trying to reach France. Good. When you find her, bring her here. I want to look her in the eye before... No. 3 sets of eyes turned to me. No. Azeglio's voice was dangerously soft. I held Alessandro tighter. Whatever you're planning, Alessandro can't be near it. And you need to think about what kind of father you want to be. The kind who protects his son. By teaching him that violence is the answer, that vengeance matters more than... She tried to kill him. Azeglio's control was slipping. Left him to die like trash. I expect you to be better than she is. I met his eyes. He's watching now. Maybe not understanding, but watching. Learning what kind of man his father is. Don't make his first lesson be blood. The silence was deafening. You dare... Azeglio started. Yes, I dare. Because someone has to care more about Alessandro's soul than your pride. Azeglio sank into his chair. What would you have me do? Let her go? Turn her over to authorities. Let the law handle it. The law is what keeps him safe from becoming like her. I stopped myself. From learning that power means destroying people instead of protecting them. Alessandro reached toward Azeglio. Papa, up. Azeglio took him automatically, and Alessandro settled against his chest with perfect trust. We both looked at him, this small, perfect life who had no idea how much darkness surrounded him. I'll think about what you said, Azeglio said finally. Vittorio, when we find Serena, hold her securely, but treat her fairly. We'll discuss consequences when I've had time to think. Sir. Vittorio's surprise was evident, but he didn't argue. You're dismissed. Lisa, stay. We spent the next hour in near silence. Azeglio sat with Alessandro, showing him a wooden puzzle. I watched them learn each other. Julia would have liked you, Azeglio said finally. She always said I needed someone who wasn't afraid to tell me when I was being an idiot. I'm sorry you lost her. When she died, when I thought I'd lost him too, I didn't see the point anymore. But you kept looking. Because she would have killed me herself if I'd given up on our son. Alessandro fitted a puzzle piece and crowed with delight. Azeglio smiled, really smiled. Then his phone buzzed. His expression hardened. They found her, trying to board a ferry to Corsica. They're bringing her back. My heart spiked. And? I meant what I said. I'll consider your advice, but some debts require payment. As long as that payment doesn't cost Alessandro his father, then help me teach him better lessons. Azeglio held my gaze. You said you'd stay as long as he needs you. I'm saying he needs you to help me be the father he deserves. It was insane. A homeless woman and a mafia boss co-parenting. But looking at Alessandro, I knew I didn't have a choice. Deal, I whispered. 3 hours later. Vittorio knocked on my door. She's here. Mr. Panicucci is deciding what to do. He asked for you. I found Azeglio in the hallway, Alessandro asleep in his arms. What are you going to do? I asked. He looked down at his son, at the small miracle we'd both fought to protect. What you asked, he said quietly. The right thing, even if it kills me. Serena sat in the holding room like she was attending a business meeting, back straight, expression composed, even with guards at the door. She looked up when Azeglio entered, and I saw calculation flash across her face before settling into defiance. I stood in the doorway with Alessandro asleep against my shoulder, watching. Azeglio had asked me to be present. "You stopped me once," he'd said. "You may need to stop me again." "Azeglio!" Serena's voice was smooth, familiar. "This is unnecessary. We can discuss this civilly." "Civilly?" He placed a folder on the table between them. "The way you civilly stole my son from his nursery? The way you civilly left him to die in an alley?" "I never intended—" "Don't." The single word cut like a blade. "We have everything. Security footage, phone records, financial transfers to the man you hired to dispose of the evidence." Serena's composure cracked slightly. "You can't prove—" Azeglio opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, bank statements, text messages. He spread them across the table methodically, each one another nail in her coffin. "You called him 6 times the week after Julia died. Transferred €20,000 to an offshore account 2 days before Alessandro disappeared. And here," he tapped one particular message. "Your own words. Make sure there's nothing left to find." The silence stretched. I watched emotions war across Serena's face. Fear, anger, a desperate search for any remaining angle. He was going to destroy everything. Her voice turned sharp, defensive. Julia's death broke him. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped leading. The family needed strength, not a grieving father obsessing over an infant. "So you decided for me." Azeglio's voice was deadly quiet. "Decided my son was disposable, that your ambition mattered more than his life." "I did what was necessary. You murdered a child." The roar came from somewhere deep, shattering his control. "My child, Julia's child, your own blood." Alessandro stirred at the noise, whimpering. I rocked him automatically, murmuring comfort, watching Azeglio's hands clench and unclench on the table's edge. This was the moment, the tipping point between the man he'd been and the man he was trying to become. Serena saw it too. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to intimate familiarity. "Azeglio, please. We grew up together. Our families have been connected for generations. You know me. I made a mistake, yes, but a mistake is a wrong turn, a miscalculation." He straightened, and I saw the Mafia boss fully emerge, cold, controlled, lethal. "What you did was treason, and you know what we do to traitors." "What we do?" Serena's eyes hardened. "Yes, I know. Your father would have already ended this. Quick, clean, permanent. That's who you are, Azeglio. That's who we all are. So stop pretending." "He's different now." My voice surprised everyone, including myself. But I stepped into the room, Alessandro warm against my shoulder, and met Serena's gaze. "He has a son to raise. That changes things." Serena laughed bitterly. "The homeless girl speaks. Tell me what a poids." "You know about our world, about what power requires." "I know it required you to leave a baby next to garbage." I kept my voice steady. "I know it required you to bet his life on the assumption that no one would care enough to save him. You were wrong. I should have killed you both when I had the chance." The casual admission sent ice through my veins. Azeglio moved so fast I almost didn't see it. One moment seated, the next looming over Serena, his hand on her throat. "Give me one reason," he growled. "One reason I shouldn't finish this right now." Serena's eyes were wide, but not panicked. "Because you're weak. Just like I said. Julia made you soft, and this—" She gestured dismissively toward me and Alessandro. "This street woman playing mother has made it worse." I saw Azeglio's grip tighten, saw the war happening behind his eyes. The old code demanded blood, demanded that betrayal be answered with death, that weakness be purged, that power be absolute. But his son was 15 feet away, sleeping peacefully, trusting that the world was safe because his father made it so. "Alessandro," I said softly. Azeglio's eyes flicked to me. "He's watching. Maybe not right now, but someday. Someday you'll have to explain who you were in this moment, what you chose. She tried to kill him, and you saved him by being better than her. Don't undo that now." The seconds stretched. Serena held perfectly still, survival instinct finally kicking in. The guards at the door waited for orders. Alessandro slept on, oblivious to the edge we balanced on. Then Azeglio released her and stepped back. "You're right," he said, his voice empty of emotion. "My father would have killed you already. Quick, clean, permanent." He returned to his seat, that dangerous calm settling over him again. "But I'm not my father, and my son won't learn justice from corpses." Serena rubbed her throat, confusion replacing fear. "What?" "Vittorio." Azeglio didn't look away from Serena. "Contact our lawyers. I want formal charges filed. Attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy. Full cooperation with the authorities." "Sir?" Even Vittorio sounded surprised. "She'll stand trial, face real consequences. And every asset she has, every account, every property, I want it seized and held for Alessandro's future." "You're handing me to the police?" Serena's voice rose with disbelief. We don't." "Things change." Azeglio's eyes were hard as stone. "You tried to teach me that weakness destroys us. Instead, you taught me that mercy can be its own kind of power." He stood, dismissing her with the gesture. "Take her to a secure location. No harm comes to her. She'll answer for what she did, but she'll answer to the law." The guards moved forward, lifting Serena from her chair. She stared at Azeglio like seeing a stranger. "This won't end the way you think," she said as they led her toward the door. "The families will see this as weakness. They'll come for you, for him. Let them come." Azeglio's voice carried absolute certainty. "And they'll learn the same lesson you did. I protect what's mine, but I do it my way now." The door closed behind her, and the room fell into heavy silence. I stood there with Alessandro, watching Azeglio process what he'd just done. The choice that went against every instinct, every training, every expectation of his world. He'd chosen mercy for his son, because of his son. "Thank you," I said quietly. He looked at me, exhausted and relieved, and something else I couldn't name. "Don't thank me yet. She was right. This will have consequences. Better consequences than the alternative. Maybe." He moved closer, his eyes on the sleeping child in my arms. "Or maybe I just guaranteed we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." "We?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. Azeglio's gaze lifted to mine. "That depends. What would it take for you to stay? Not as a witness, not as Alessandro's temporary caretaker, but as part of this, of us." The question hung in the air between us, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't even know what this is yet." "Neither do I." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But we figure it out together. For him." Alessandro chose that moment to wake, blinking sleepily, then breaking into a smile when he saw us both. "Mama, Papa, both of us, together, like we were supposed to be." I looked at Azeglio and nodded slowly. Whatever came next, we'd face it as a family, even if neither of us knew what that meant yet. Alessandro's bath time became my favorite part of the day. 2 weeks after Serena's arrest, I'd settled into a rhythm I still didn't quite believe. Every evening at 6, I'd take Alessandro to the nursery bathroom, and we'd spend an hour in our own small world. "Splash!" Alessandro commanded, slapping the water with both hands. I laughed and splashed back, earning delighted shrieks. This was the child I'd bathed in shelter sinks, and now he had marble and heated floors. The contrast still made my head spin. "Okay, troublemaker, time to wash your hair." "No," his favorite new word, delivered with maximum drama. "Yes, close your eyes." He squeezed them shut obediently, still trusting me completely. I worked shampoo through his dark curls and rinsed carefully. The bathroom door opened, and Azeglio appeared, still in his work clothes. He always came to find us before dinner. "How's bath time?" he asked. "Wet," I said, gesturing to my soaked shirt. Alessandro saw his father and broke into his sunshine smile. "Papa, look!" He demonstrated his splashing technique with renewed vigor. Azeglio laughed and knelt beside the tub. "Very impressive. Need help?" "Grab his towel, the warm one from the rack." We'd fallen into this easy partnership over the past 2 weeks. Small moments of cooperation, building something that felt almost normal. Azeglio held out the warmed towel, and I lifted Alessandro from the bath, wrapping him quickly. "Da-da!" Alessandro said suddenly, clearly. Not babbling, but intentional. "Da-da, up!" Azeglio froze. Did he just... "Da-da," Alessandro repeated, reaching for his father with pruny fingers. I watched Azeglio's face transform, joy and wonder and grief all mixed together. He took Alessandro gently, and I saw his eyes were wet. "Yes," he whispered. "Da-da. That's right." The moment was so intimate I felt like an intruder. I gathered the bath toys quietly, giving them space. "Lisa." Azeglio's voice was soft. "There's something I want to show you. After we put him down." "Okay." An hour later, Alessandro was asleep. Azeglio led me through the villa to a wing I hadn't explored, stopping at a heavy wooden door. He unlocked it and gestured for me to enter. Inside was a suite, bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom, all decorated in soft neutrals with windows overlooking the garden. Books lined the shelves, a desk by the window, doors that locked from the inside. "What is this?" I asked. "Your room, if you want it." Azeglio moved to the windows. "The one I gave you was temporary. Guest quarters. This is different." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I don't want you to feel trapped here." He turned to face me. "You've stayed because Alessandro needs you, but I need to know, is that enough? Or are you waiting for the right moment to leave?" The honesty caught me off guard. "I don't know," I admitted. "Some days this feels real. Other days I can't believe any of this is happening. What would make it feel real?" "I need to know I'm choosing this. Not just going along because I'm grateful or scared or don't have anywhere else to go." "Then choose." Azeglio's voice was firm. "I'm offering you this room, this life, this place in Alessandro's world, as his mother figure, the woman who saved him and loved him and fought for him, with what strings attached? Autonomy, a salary, legal documentation establishing your guardianship role if anything happens to me. And boundaries? My business stays separate from this house, from him, from you, always." It was more than I dared hope for. "And if I want to leave someday?" "Then you leave. No threats, no consequences, though it would destroy Alessandro and me." The admission hung between us, vulnerable and raw. "Why does it matter what I do?" "Because you've made this house feel like a home instead of a mausoleum. Because Alessandro lights up when you walk in the room. Because you made me choose mercy when everything in me screamed for vengeance, and you were right." He moved closer. Because you're the first person in years who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. I'm afraid of lots of things, but not me. Not anymore." He was right. Somewhere between the church and tonight, the fear had transformed into trust. "I need time," I said, "to figure out what I want, who I am here. Take all the time you need. This room is yours either way." "Can I ask you something?" I said. "What kind of life are you offering Alessandro? What values? What kind of man do you want him to become?" Azeglio was quiet for a long moment. "Better than me," he said finally. "Someone who understands power but uses it with compassion. Someone who learns from the woman who kept him alive when the world said he was disposable. That's why I need you to stay." The words settled around us like a promise. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Not forever, not yet, but I'll try." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. I have conditions. I want to go back to school, finish my nursing training, have something that's mine." "Done. I'll arrange it." "And I want to see Rosa. She helped me when no one else would. We'll bring her here, safely, whenever you want. And when Alessandro's old enough to ask about how we met, about why I was homeless, I want to tell him the truth, all of it." Azeglio nodded. "He deserves the truth. About everything." We sealed the agreement without shaking hands, just two people building something fragile and real. The next morning, I found Rosa in the villa kitchen. "Lisa." She pulled me into a fierce hug. "Look at you. I almost didn't recognize you." She held me at arm's length, studying my face. "Are you happy? Really happy, or just comfortable?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm safe. Alessandro's safe. That's more than I thought we'd have." Rosa's expression turned serious. "Just be sure you're choosing a life, not a gilded cage. Men like Azeglio Panicucci, they don't let go of what they claim is theirs. Make sure you're choosing this with your eyes open." Her words echoed in my mind long after she left, mixing with Azeglio's offer, with Alessandro's laugh, with the promise of rooms that locked from the inside. I was choosing. I just hoped I was choosing right. The city registrar's office was nothing like the villa. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, the bureaucratic smell of old paper and impatience. But the woman behind the desk treated Azeglio Panicucci with the kind of nervous efficiency reserved for people who made problems disappear. "Everything is in order, Mr. Panicucci." She slid a folder across the desk. "The guardianship documentation establishes Miss Randi as Alessandro's legal co-guardian in the event of your incapacity or death. She'll have full parental rights and decision-making authority." I stared at the papers, my name typed in official script next to Azeglio's. "Lisa Maria Randi, legal guardian." "Sign here," the registrar indicated. "And here." My hand shook slightly as I wrote my signature, once, twice, 3 times. Each stroke making it real, making me responsible for this child not just out of love, but by law. Azeglio signed his portions without hesitation, then looked at me. "This means you're bound to him legally now, to us. Are you sure?" Thought about Alessandro, probably napping in Maria's care back at the villa. His first words, his first steps, his absolute trust that the world was safe because we made it so. "I'm sure." The registrar stamped the final page with bureaucratic finality. "Congratulations. The state recognizes your family." Family. The word followed me out into the autumn sunlight. Rosa was waiting in the villa's kitchen when we returned, and she stood as I entered, something in her hand. "I brought you something," she said quietly. "Should have given it to you sooner, but I was waiting for the right time." She pressed a small medal into my palm, Saint Christopher, patron of travelers. The silver was worn soft from handling. "This was your mother's," Rosa said. "She gave it to me the week before she died, asked me to hold on to it until you landed somewhere safe. Said you'd need a reminder that you came from love, even when the road got hard." My throat closed. I'd thought I'd lost everything of my mother's, sold it, pawned it, left it behind in the long fall from daughter to homeless. But here was this small piece of her, kept safe by a woman who barely knew me. "Thank you," I whispered. Rosa pulled me into a hug. "Your mama would be proud. You saved a child, built yourself a life. That takes courage." She pulled back, her eyes serious. "Just remember, you always have a choice. This villa, this man, this world, it's yours only as long as you choose it. The day it stops being your choice, you leave. Promise me." "I promise." She kissed my forehead like a blessing and left. I stood there holding my mother's medal, feeling the weight of continuity, her love, my love for Alessandro, the fragile chain connecting us across time and loss. That evening, Azeglio asked me to meet him in his study. He stood at the window overlooking the garden, holding a leather-bound ledger. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "I want to show you something," he said, opening the book. Inside were names, dates, amounts. A meticulous record spanning 11 months. I recognized some entries: rewards offered, investigators hired, resources deployed. At the bottom of each page, a running total in red ink. "I started this the day Alessandro disappeared," Azeglio explained. "Every person who helped search got logged here. Every lead, every expense, every favor called in. I told myself when I found him, I'd settle every debt, pay back everyone who helped, punish everyone who didn't." He flipped to the final page. The total was staggering: hundreds of thousands of euros in resources, favors worth far more. Then, in fresh ink at the bottom, closed, paid in full. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means I'm done keeping score." He set the ledger on his desk. "For 11 months, this was the only thing that mattered. Finding him, making someone pay, but you taught me something better." "What's that?" "That getting him back was the payment. Everything else is just noise." He looked at me. "You gave me my son and showed me how to be his father. That's worth more than any ledger can hold." He moved to the window and I followed. Outside, Alessandro played in the garden with Maria, chasing butterflies in the fading light. "His first real lesson should be mercy," Azeglio said softly. "Not vengeance, not power. Mercy. That's what you taught me." We stood together watching Alessandro, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, too much uncertainty for that, but possibility. The chance that we could build something good here, something worth choosing. 3 days later, I woke at dawn to Alessandro's babbling from the nursery. I found him standing in his crib, pointing excitedly at the sunrise painting the sky pink and gold. "Pretty," he declared. "Very pretty. Come here, baby." I lifted him out and carried him to the loggia overlooking the garden. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of roses and possibility. Alessandro settled against my shoulder, content to watch the world wake up. "Mama," he said softly. "Yeah, baby. I'm here." Footsteps behind us. Azeglio appeared, drawn by the same early light. He stopped a respectful distance away, giving us space but clearly wanting to be part of this moment. "Morning," I said. "Morning." He moved closer, his hand gently touching Alessandro's back. "Couldn't sleep? Didn't want to miss this." We stood there together, 3 silhouettes against a new sky, building something fragile and real from the pieces of our broken pasts. Then I saw him, a courier approaching the gate, professional and anonymous, carrying a black envelope. Vittorio intercepted him, took the envelope, brought it to Azeglio with a look that said, "Trouble." Azeglio opened it. Inside, a single card embossed with an unfamiliar crest. Below it, one line in elegant script. "Heirs draw enemies." The threat was clear. Whoever sent this knew about Alessandro, knew he'd been found, knew we were vulnerable. I watched Azeglio's expression harden, then deliberately soften as he looked at his son. "What do we do?" I asked quietly. Azeglio folded the card and pocketed it. "We protect him. Together. Whatever comes. They'll keep coming, won't they? People who want to hurt him to get to you." "Probably." I looked down at Alessandro, at his innocent face and complete trust, and felt something fierce and protective rise in my chest. I'd found him in the trash. I'd kept him alive when the world said he was disposable. I'd fought poverty and fear and impossible odds to give him a chance. I wasn't about to let anyone take that away. "Let them come," I said, my voice steady. "We built him a kingdom of gentler hands. We'll keep building it, and anyone who tries to hurt him will have to go through both of us." Azeglio's eyes met mine, and I saw respect there. Partnership. Something deeper I wasn't ready to name yet. "Together," he agreed. Alessandro, oblivious to the threat, reached up and touched both our faces, his small hands bridging the distance between us. "Mama, Papa," he said simply, as if that explained everything. And maybe it did. We were a family now, broken pieces fitted together, building something new from the ruins of what we'd lost. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't safe, but it was ours, and we'd fight like hell to keep it.